We'd like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe and many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As a municipality, Aurora has shared responsibility for the stewardship of this land. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, recognized through Treaty 13 as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Move to receipt of the minutes. So if I could get someone to move receipt for information minutes from May 9th, 2022. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, comments, questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We have no delegations. We have two items for consideration. First is memorandum from Senior Financial Management Advisor regarding debt management policy. Rachel?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair. So this policy pertains to debt and it's part of the actions that are falling out of the fiscal strategy. So it fits under the debt management pillar of the strategy. What we are looking to do with this policy is to ensure that we're setting the guidelines for the appropriate use of debt for the town to ensure longer term financial sustainability. So the memo provides a bit of an overview, but the key thing is here, there's two main elements to this policy and how it will affect the way we manage and maintain debt. The first is the annual repayment limit the province issues is set at 25% of own source revenue. So that includes pretty much everything except development charges. For a municipality, for our municipality of Aurora, it would not make sense for us to be issuing debt to that level. So that would be a significant amount of debt that we'd be looking at issuing on an annual are issuing and repaying on an annual basis. That means 25% of own source revenues would be the principal and interest payment. So we are looking to, through this policy, to reduce that to 10%, which we would still be staying well below throughout what we are managing for our capital plan. The other piece of this is much of the debt that we do issue relates to growth projects, and many growth projects are funded through development charges. So debt can be a useful tool for managing development charges because often there are times where we build large capital projects and the money that comes in to pay for those projects comes along with growth, which follows after we actually implement the project. So we are also recommending from a development charge perspective that we ensure that from a reserve perspective, we maintain at least a minimum balance of our consolidated development charge reserve funds that totals 1 year's principal and interest. So if there's any sort of market fluctuations or for some reason 1 year we have very limited development charge collections, we know that we've got that buffer to ensure that we have enough to pay our debt in the following year. So that's how it gives us a little bit of flexibility and time to adapt through capital planning and adjust the capital program appropriately should we end up in a situation like that. So this policy speaks to those key facts plus the different debt instruments we have, short-term versus long-term debt, and the different types of debt can be used in those instances.
That's okay. That's all? Okay.
That's all for now.
All right. Thank you. I wasn't sure if you were stopping or if you were just taking a pause. So that's why I was making sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there any comments or questions? Michael?
Thank you. Rachel, thank you to you and Jason and all your staff for the hard work on the development of the policy. Just a couple of little questions. I guess first, just some clarity around internal financing. I know we've done that, in certain circumstances. So with regards to the policy, in reading through it, it looks like, we would only recommend internal financing if it was for a short term, 1 to 5 years. Is that correct?
Rachel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, internal financing is best used for shorter term debt, because generally when we go out for debt is for longer term projects. Usually we're looking at a minimum of 10-year term and sometimes upwards of 20 years or more. So for short term, it gives us plenty of time to be able to go and repay that in the near term with future development charge or tax levy collections that we're looking at.
Michael?
And then I did note that in terms of the reporting, it talks about providing an annual report on the status of the town's debt. I did go to the town's webpage. There is a specific webpage for the town debt. However, it's very much outdated. So if we can just ensure that we continue to keep that current, looking at it, it looks like it was last updated in 2018. So I think that, it's always good to be able to report not just to council, but the public in general with regards to the debt. And then my third comment really is just around, when you bring this to council and make the presentation with regards to it, I always think it's good to provide some comparators, to talk about some of the facts that you just mentioned about, having a lower threshold at 10%, because when people hear the word debt, they immediately think of a variety of things. So I just want to put this with some context and in a better perspective with regards to how the town does, because obviously from my perspective, and I also believe from your perspective, that we're doing very well in this regard in terms of our financial health relative to other municipalities.
Rachel?
That's it for my comments.
Oh, thank you. Any other comments? Harold, did you have any? Or go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel, as well, and Jason and the whole team for putting this package together and managing our town's finances. Whenever I think about our debt payment schedule, I look at DC revenue forecast and then annual debt payments. In the denominator, DC revenue on the numerator, and everything is just a balance of those two figures. So given the trajectory of interest rates, over the last couple of months, and even this week, rates have gone up, 50 beeps, from all parts of the yield curve. So how does staff look at our debt schedule, given the current rate of interest, and how does it change our town plan when it comes to long and short projects?
Rachel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, I want to give Sandy the credit for putting the policy together. So she's here this evening, she's listening in. She's the one that actually wrote the policy and is doing a lot of work on debt. And a lot of what you're asking about, Harold, goes into the work that she does. So when we look at debt and issuing debt, is part of our capital budget development process. So we look at it from a capital planning perspective. What can we do from a reserve management side? And we also look at from a debt management piece, and we also look at the revenue piece on the development charges. So it's creating that balance between them. So obviously, if our debt ability to issue debt is going to be changed and how much we can issue based on the amount of interest, like what the interest rates are. The good thing is with our interest rates, getting through our debt through Infrastructure Ontario, we get better rates than what you would get on a typical mortgage. So we do get better rates than the average consumer would see, but still they are increasing with the Bank of Canada rates. One of the things that feeds into the debt repayment is development charges. And development charges do get indexed based on inflation. So it does have an impact there, but then it also depends on how much we actually collect in development charges. And that depends on what's happening in the community at the time. So every year, regardless of what's happening with interest rates, we always have to balance that. We have to look at what our future debt obligations would be if we were to issue debt on a project. Does it make sense to issue debt on a project for the overall reserve management structure? And we also have to take a look at what we actually expect to receive in development charges versus what we necessarily have in the plan, because the development charge bylaw and study it can be optimistic at times as to how much we expect to collect. So it's a very delicate balance. We do that through our budget analysis. This is what generates a little bit of pushback from finance to the other departments in managing their overall capital budget and making sure that we can develop a plan that we can actually achieve.
Harold?
Thank you. And the negative part of the type of environment that we're going through economically is that it's a huge pain point in terms of financing costs for households as well as corporations and municipalities. But the positive aspect of this is that we go through all corporate entities go through a financial stress test, and it ultimately determines how healthy a corporation is. So I think over the next year or two, as we go through this period, I think it will really confirm or not confirm, how healthy we really are. And I suspect that, we are, quite healthy and we'll be able to ride this through. But I always think about the worst case scenario. And, when we see, CPI and PPI hitting 8-11%, and I look at DC revenues kind of trailing that, trailing our debt payments because, realistically, I don't see DC's, even though it's supposed to be linked to inflation to a certain degree, I don't see DC revenue being aligned with inflation. And so, it'll be interesting, how, our finance team deals with this over the next 12 months, because it will certainly impact our capital plan and some of our long-term projects. And lastly, I was looking at the long-term debentures, things like the Hallmark baseball diamonds. It says 20 years at 2.65, Sports Dome 15 years at 2.42. Are all our long-term debt, is it fixed over that whole term, or is there like a reset at any point in that term?
Rachel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to ask Jason to pipe in here a little bit. Most of our debt is actually issued for that long term, that whole term. There was one debenture recently, and I can't remember which one it was, Jason, where it was issued for 10 years with a renewal and then another period of time, and that one will be coming to council probably in the new year. So Jason, do you have the information on that?
Jason?
I do. Through you, Mr. Chair, the debenture that Rachel's alluding to is our Joint Operations Center debenture. It was structured with a two 5-year term alignment. So our first 5-year term elapses in 2023. So we'll plan to renew that debenture for the remaining 5 years, probably early next year. As Rachel mentioned, we are following interest rates closely. So our goal is to minimize that interest rate impact on the town in terms of when we pull the trigger on that renewal.
Harold?
Thanks, Jason. And just one interesting comment is that when I was looking at the SART construction, it's a 20-year term, and that rate was or is 4.49, and the Hallmark and the Sports Dome is at 265 and 242. So it's interesting how 15 years have passed or so since we obtained that debt, and our rates are still very competitive, not much lower than the SARC debt. So I thought that was interesting. Thank you all, and thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. Michael, did you have your hand up again, or is it?
I did. Jason didn't confirm whether those rates are fixed. I know that in the report that's currently on the town's website, it does show that it's a fixed rate for like the street lights, the JOC, and the ones that we currently have debentures on, but wasn't sure whether the ones that Harold referenced are fixed rates.
Jason?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, they're all fixed rate debentures.
Michael?
Thanks.
Thank you. No other comments or questions? Well, thank you, Rachel, Jason, Sandy, the whole team for incredible work. So thank you very much. Moved by Michael, seconded by Harold. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we have memorandum from Manager Financial Management regarding Finance Advisory Committee Council term summary. Rachel.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this provides an overview of the things that this committee has reviewed over this council term. So there's been the typical things that would come here, which is the line by line reviews that happened earlier in the term. We completed those well over a year ago, but there's also been some other policy documents and things that have been reviewed by this committee and for being able to provide input in. Some of the bigger items include fiscal strategy when that came in its draft form to get feedback, and which now has been approved by council, and we are following in the development of our budgets and through and also the way we would issue debt.
Very good. Gentlemen, any comments? Questions?
It's great.
Great. Harold?
No comments.
No comments. It's great. I'll say thanks. I know we each took a turn as chair. I think Michael, Harold, and also Councillor Gallo was on here for a bit. And so I thank all of you for, doing your part and, working hard to make sure that this committee continues to, strive to look for efficiencies and also, look at our financial stability within the town. So I thank you for all your hard work, and I thank staff for all their hard work. And I think it's a great summary. Maybe we should pull it when this is in front of council and just kind of discuss some of the things that we've accomplished over the term. So thank you, everyone. Someone like to move it? Receive for information? Oh, Michael, do you have something to say?
Just briefly, going back many years, when I first was on council, the budget process was a long and laborious challenge that often, created some friction between council and staff. And I think, that's one of the things that I'm most proud of that the Finance Advisory Committee was able to do is, collaborate internally and come up with those budget principles and process to make for a better experience for all. And at the end of the day, delivering a much better result. And I think that, it's been mentioned by you and others that, these last 4 years, we've delivered a really strong budget year after year. And I think it's been the lowest on record of any term of council, and other than those years of zero, but we won't go there. But, I just think that to me, that's always was the goal, to try and have some of these conversations in a more informal setting at the committee level. So they work through these things so that the process at the end of the day is more efficient and more effective. And, from my perspective, it's certainly been that case. And, I want to thank, Rachel and Jason and Doug and all the staff that have, put the effort in to help make this process a good one. So appreciate it.
So, Harold, you want to add in?
Sure. Michael brought back some bad memories that I thought I wanted to share and congratulate staff. I remember my first term, my first year, budget was going item by item, line by line. It was so painful that I thought, I dreaded budget period. And so 8 years later, it's a world of difference. And so, thanks to the whole finance team, Doug and everyone else for making this, the evolution that it's become. And I thank the mayor and, Councillor Thompson for his great input throughout. And it was a pleasure working with all of you.
Thanks, Harold. And I'll give a little extra kudos to Michael because he did bring this committee back. It was gone for quite a long period of time, if I'm correct. And then I think, Michael, you pushed for it to come back, and we finally brought it back last term. If I'm correct, maybe I'm wrong. I forget. I don't know, but yes. But thank you for bringing it back, as you said. We've done some incredible work, and as you mentioned, and I've mentioned, you've all heard me say it. We've delivered the lowest 4-year tax rate term in 20 years. So That's an incredible feat, I think, for this council and for staff to do to continue to provide, the best possible service at the best possible price to the residents of this community. So thank you, everyone. So mover and a seconder. Receive for information. Michael Harrell. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. New business. Anybody have a new business? No? Motion to adjourn? Harold, Michael, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Adios. See you in an hour.